Welcome to Doors to Hope and Healing, an inside look at foster care and adoption needs in Connecticut. My name is Jacqueline Ford. I have had the honor of working for the department for close to 30 years, and although I may be familiar with many of the topics I bring to you, I have invited experts in those fields to help dispel the myths and misconceptions that often act as barriers. Join us as we open our doors to an inside look at the Department of Children and Families. Welcome to Doors to Hope and Healing. Lori and Julio and Bob, it's so nice to have you on the show with us today. We're going to be talking about Adoption Awareness Month, which is one of my favorite months of the year working at DCF, because it's an opportunity for us to not only shed a light on our need for more adoptive families in Connecticut, but it's also a chance for us to celebrate our current foster families and adoptive families for all the work they do throughout the year. So today we're going to be talking about what that month entails and how we work together with our partners through the court with Bob and through our Heart Gallery photographers with Julio, and how DCF plans, you know, all those nuts and bolts that go into making this month possible. So Lori, let's start with you. What is your role at DCF?
So I'm a program supervisor in central office, and I oversee the subsidy unit, which reviews all the packets for guardianship and adoption. In addition to that, we oversee the college program for our adoptees. In addition to that, we have a permanency resource exchange. So in that unit, they match children and families for adoption. They do the permanency planning teams, and they consult with the social workers in the area office regarding the packets and the forms that go into that work.
Wow, that's a lot of moving parts there. Can you talk to us about Adoption Day? That's going to be coming up on November 22nd, I believe.
Sure. So Adoption Day in Connecticut is the Friday before Thanksgiving, and it's a day when we really strive to have as many adoptions as possible on that one day. So it's a big pull for the courts, for the regional offices, for central office, but it's a wonderful, joyous occasion for that particular day.
And does this happen within all the DCF offices in the 6 regions of the state and those surrounding courts?
Yes, it does. We have 14 area offices, and we begin soliciting as early as September to really get them thinking about which children will be ready for November 22nd. And they are happening in every single court. I just heard confirmed today that we have every single juvenile court scheduled for an adoption on the 22nd.
Wow, that's very exciting. And we'll get to you, Bob, and talk about that whole court process and how they're selected. So when you say that you talk in September to the social workers and you begin that conversation, what is it that you're asking of them to ask their families? Because I know that in the juvenile courts, we do adoptions all the time throughout the year, not just on Adoption Day.
Yes, we do. And in fact, over the year, we've done over 530 adoptions in 1 year this past fiscal year.
Wow, that's
so
a big
it
number.
Is definitely something that we do every day. This year, we have, at this moment in time, 82 children identified for Adoption Day. So that is really a big lift for all of us.
It sure is. And so when you're asking families to participate in Adoption Day, what is special about Adoption Day that they can make a choice to or not to participate?
They can definitely, and if they're interested, we just want to highlight the awareness and the need, again, like you said. So if they're willing to, we're going to ask them to sign a release, and it's really with the support of the social worker who they've been working very closely with over the years to really be ready for this. And once we have a release, we work with our Office of External Affairs. They in turn work with our local media partners, and then we coordinate with TV, with the newspapers, to again really highlight the joyous occasion of adoption.
So the family has to be in that place where they want to make building their family public, in the public arena, and share all that.
We wouldn't want to pressure anyone who's not interested in doing that.
And if they're not, there's another day that we can finalize that adoption in the courts.
Absolutely.
So do you have a theme this year for Adoption Day?
Yes, this year the theme is kinship adoption. So kinship is defined as relatives, related by blood or marriage to the child, and then we also have kin who are unrelated by blood or marriage, and that could be like a close family friend. It has to be someone who has a significant emotional connection to the child. And at DCF, we work really hard at increasing our children with relatives and kin. Nationally, the rate of children living with relatives is about 29%. In DCF, we have 44% of our children who are living with someone that they know.
Wow,
so
that's a wonderful. So if a child can't be with their birth family, really the next best place for them to be is with a family member.
Absolutely.
So how is that family member identified? Is it that they know that the child's come into care, or do you seek out that family member?
We definitely begin from day one, from investigations on forward, and we also have our permanency staff and the specialists. They also do what's called search and engagement from day one. We have folks in the foster care division whose role is to make sure that that firewall is set up, so we begin that from day one. We cannot even use a core foster home until we've exhausted the search and the location and engagement of all the relatives.
And then that relative goes through a training. Is it as in-depth as a
It's a condensed version, specifically because you're only taking in that relative child. You're not taking in children that you don't know. So it's a condensed version, and they go through the home study process, all the licensing documents, and they're also given in-home support from a caregiver team. So they're given support during that process.
And they're given financial support
Absolutely.
and insurance as well.
All the children receive boarding care, and the children receive their health insurance. Yeah.
And do you find that there's a percentage of children that reunify more quickly when they are placed with a relative?
Absolutely. Whenever they're placed with a relative, what's important for that child is that they're much more successful because they have a connection to their extended family. And so they're not living with a stranger, trying to negotiate that whole world. And when you're with a relative, you're already familiar with the house or the neighborhood or the school system. So it's much, much better for the kids. And it's better for the biological parents as well because they're more comfortable and they can focus on their rehabilitation and their services. And it's also better for the caregiver.
Wow, better for everyone all the way
Absolutely.
around. That's wonderful. So this is an opportunity to celebrate them and also to let our community know that if they have a member of their family that's involved with DCF, that they can be a big support to them.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Lori. So Bob, to the court system. So we have juvenile courts all across the state, and I know that we don't only do adoptions. There's other legal matters that we tend with the courts. So neglect cases and hearings and termination of parental rights and all of that work. But Adoption Day is something really special. Can you tell us about that?
Sure, yes. Adoption Day is very special in the juvenile courts because most of the work we do is not very happy work. We deal with, as you mentioned, neglect cases, that's child abuse and neglect, and of course juvenile delinquency. But this is the one day a year when everybody's happy to be in juvenile court. So it's a wonderful experience.
So walk us through your relationship with DCF and planning for this day. When do you begin hearing from us to start scheduling and preparing?
So we will usually hear from DCF sometime in late September, early October, as they've identified some cases that they'd like to have heard on National Adoption Day. Once they do that, we start blocking out the time that we're going to use on National Adoption Day for those court hearings. And every court will do it a little bit differently. In Bridgeport, where I work, we do the National Adoption Day cases in the afternoon. So this year, we have a half a dozen cases scheduled. So we'll have two at 2 o'clock, one for each of the two judges that sits in our court, and then two more at 2:30, two more at 3, and that would be the end of the actual day for us. Both our judges want to participate in that because it's such a wonderful feeling. We've lived with these cases from the time they were filed, which can be literally years earlier, and we've been dealing with the unhappy parts, the tragic parts, the sad parts of the case. So it's always great when the judges and the staff can participate in the positive and joyous outcome.
Sure, a happy ending for that family, especially if you've been following that case since an order of temporary custody years prior to that day.
Right.
So when we begin to work with the courts, I know that security is always heightened at the court offices, at the courts. Do we have certain things put in place for, because we're allowing media to come in and we're allowing other people to access the courts on this day?
Yeah, the juvenile courts normally are not public, but National Adoption Day is different, so we do make arrangements for media if they want to participate, and of course family and friends are invited to each family's hearing, so we have dozens and dozens of people in the courtroom watching the adoption for that particular family. So that's very different from our normal arrangements. with cases.
I've had the pleasure of being in the courtroom on Adoption Day and seeing those cases finalized. And it is such an emotional time to see those families become one on that day, and just the joyous celebration that it is for the family and the child. Sometimes the children even have an opportunity to speak. So is there anything special that your judges do to make that day a little special for the kids?
Yes, typically, once we've gathered everybody in the courtroom, the judge will explain some of the legalities and some of the formalities associated with the day, but then they do often invite anyone who wants to speak, whether it's the child or the adoptive parents or any of the friends or relatives that are present. And very often people do participate in that. And then the judge will formalize the adoption itself by covering the legal niceties. And at the end, the culmination is pronouncing that a decree of adoption will enter, and then if there's a name change being entered, the judge will formally do that, sign off on the paperwork. And then our judges are often invited to participate in picture taking. So in addition to the formal decree, court order, we give the family a certificate, and so the judge will often pose with the family and the child and the new family holding the certificate, and they'll have that keepsake from the day to take home with them.
Is there any case or any situation in your courts that has really resonated with you, something that you have experienced or something that they've spoken about to talk about what just an emotionally positive day that is?
Well, there are a couple of cases that I can think of. Both happen to be kinship cases that fit in with this year's theme. One was a case of 3 children, siblings, who were removed from their home when the oldest was 8, the middle was a year old, and the youngest was just a month old. And the parents had all kinds of drug and mental health issues and could not live at home. During the course of the proceeding, the mother actually died of a drug overdose. So these kids really had been through the ringer. But fortunately, families stepped up. Problem being, both families, mother and father's families, stepped up. So there was a long battle between each side of the family, but at the end of the day, the maternal grandparents adopted all 3 girls in this case, and they've now formed a beautiful new family with the grandparents adopting them. I also recall a case of a boy who was 13 when he came into the system. It was a terrible circumstance where, again, the mother had serious drug problems and was already pretty much out of the picture. But the boy called the police because his father, in a drunken rage, was beating him, choking him, and by the time the police arrived on the scene, they saw the father with a metal pipe in his hand going after this boy. Took a while, the process worked itself out, and an aunt stepped up to adopt this boy and give him the loving home that he deserves.
Wow, what a beautiful testament to family that is. So there's something that you had spoken about previously when we were talking about how we plan that day, and you mentioned pictures. So Julio, I'd love to talk to you about that experience. So Julio, you're a Heart Gallery photographer for DCF, which for our viewers is talented photographers who step forward to volunteer their time to take pictures of our children who need a forever home. And those pictures are displayed in the community with their stories in hopes to find someone who may see that picture and move forward. So those pictures tell a story, and when we have talented photographers such as yourself come forward, it really helps us with our permanency plan for those kids. So on Adoption Day, when the courts open their doors and we speak with Lori and Deanna, her team, we find out which courts are participating and how many adoptions in each, and then we ask Heart Gallery photographers to volunteer their time in the court. So Julio, you volunteered in November, and it was in the Hartford court, I believe.
Hartford.
Can you talk to us about that experience? What made you want to be a Heart Gallery photographer?
Well, I've always wanted to give back to my community, and we're doing photography, and I love children and love to see them happy. So I figured this was a perfect fit. Like you said, I definitely went to the Hartford courthouse, and seeing, I mean, the kids are happy, you know, and they're just kids, you know, they're happy, they're annoyed, they're tired, they're cranky, and they're just being kids. For them, it's just another day, and they don't understand a lot of the attention. You know, the older ones do, but the small ones don't. But it's the parents, the new parents, their smiles, the grandparents, the aunts, the uncles, the new cousins, they're so happy, and that's what makes what I do so worthwhile.
So do you take pictures while the court proceedings are going on, or do you take pictures of the family afterwards, a formal picture?
Both. The judges always allow us to take pictures during the actual proceedings. As long as you don't go past the bench, that's fine. But they're very open to, they want us to capture the actual moment, so they don't want us to miss anything. So they gave us the freedom. And then after the actual adoption happens and everyone goes back out into the lobby, then we can take formal pictures.
And then those pictures are uploaded and sent to the DCF staff, and they're given to the family as a keepsake. And it truly does capture just that family being born on that day.
Exactly.
So we so appreciate you being there, and I know you're scheduled for the Hartford Court this coming November 22nd, and we're going to love to have you there. Is there any Heart Gallery picture taking experience that has resonated with you that you'd like to share with our viewers?
Well, I took a picture of a young child named Andrew, and he's a sweet little angel. I mean, his smile was from here to here, and he was so excited to show off his soccer skills, and he wanted to make sure I capture that. So we did a little soccer shoot, and he was so happy, and he showed off his Legos and his little truck. And it's so hard to walk away and not adopt them yourself. It really is. But then there's another girl, my first shoot ever. I have a home studio, so she came in with her social worker. And at the end of the actual session, I just sat there and saying, how could she possibly not have a family? Being so loving and so energetic, and just her spirit was amazing. So it broke my heart to think that she just didn't have a family. But luckily for her and for everyone, obviously, she's not been adopted. So she's gracing a family.
It is.
That's amazing.
But it's with your help, and I know that there are going to be those times when children walk away from you, or you and your wife, who assists you with taking pictures, walks away from these children with a heavy heart.
Yes.
But you are doing something remarkably, you know, for each of these children who you're photographing, because you're bringing to life their story. We often used to just put pictures out in the communities without the story, and now we have the story with the picture, so that it really tells what this child needs, and they see their beautiful faces. So I appreciate the three of you being on with us today. It's been a great segment. I think our viewers have an understanding of what Adoption Day is all about. For Lori, if any of our viewers are watching us today, can you talk about what our needs are at the department for adoption?
Oh, our needs are always adoption. So you can go on our website and you'll find the Adoption Resource Exchange information. There are very easy links to look at either foster care or adoption, so there's a lot of good information right there.
And do we have a particular need for a certain age child?
We have needs for all children, babies, young children, teenagers.
Medically complex as well.
Absolutely.
So if they visit ctfosteradopt.com, they can also see a full array of our Heart Gallery children's pictures that are taken by Heart Gallery photographers like Julio, and all of their stories as well are there. So thank you again all for being here. Now we're going to show you a video of a young lady named Charlise who needs her forever home. Please watch this video, and if you're interested in learning more about Charlise, you can call 1-888-KID-HERO, or you can visit ctfosteradopt.com. Thank you.
I actually like to do a little bit of everything. I like to sing, I like to dance, I like to play with my friends, I like to go outside, I like to ride bikes. The thing I like about school best is I like that they understand me, I like that they help me, I like that they give me second chances. I like math because there's always a twist in it, and you always get to learn something fun, and I think it just challenges me to do better. The perfect family for me: have a older brother, maybe a little sister, because I just love children. I would want someone to not judge me for my mistakes, but I want them to still love me. for who I am, and I'm not gonna pretend to be someone I'm not. I'm just gonna be me, and I hope they just accept me for me. I like pets because they really can get you to a place that a human just wouldn't understand. If I was with a friend and they felt sad, I would give them this advice, and I would say, what's the matter? You shouldn't be down because life is just too short, and it takes more muscles to frown than it does to smile. I don't want to act for too much, but just love and affection. So I want basically to have what I never had. I love life, I love learning, I just love everything around me. But I'm not perfect, I'm gonna make mistakes, and I learn from them, so that's what makes me special and unique.